Signs and wonders are not believed. Only a providence needs such things. There is no help either in prayer or in asceticism or in visions. If all this is religion, then there's no longer any religion for me. My religion, if there is anything left that I may call by that name, consists in working for the creation of the genius. Education is all that can be hoped for, and all that gives comfort is called art. Education is the love of what is being created, an excess of love beyond self-love. Religion is loving beyond ourselves. The work of art is the image of such a love beyond oneself and a perfect image. A man who wants to be good and holy today would have a much harder time. In order to be good, he couldn't be as unfair to knowledge as the earlier holy men were. He would have to be a holy man who knew, joining love and wisdom. And he would have to do nothing more with a belief in gods or demigods or providence, just as the Indian holy men had nothing to do with such a belief. In addition, he'd have to be healthy and keep healthy. Otherwise, he would begin to distrust himself. And perhaps he would not this is where it gets tight. It says, perhaps he would not at all look like an ascetic saint, but more like a playboy. That's what it says, man. I know it's backwards, but it's a pretty good translation. The education of the philosopher. Firstly, to be desensitized to nationalism through early travels. That's so true. Fuck your state. It's all about the world. Then to know men and to read little. This is so true. Nietzsche is one of the most well-read, and at the same time, he never espouses reading for the sake of reading at all. He says, no culture of sitting at home. And I suppose, me doing this is sitting at home, but through the internet, we can create culture while still just, I don't know. I wonder what he'd have thought of the internet. And to take the state and duties lightly, or to emigrate. Not Donish, no universities, nor a history of philosophy. He should seek the truth for himself, not in order to write books. That's so true. It's like, he also said, I only want to read books that became something, not books that wanted to be books. But books that, were naturally just thought. And he was like, well, that's a lot to put in a book. Memory has nothing to do with nerves or brain. And this is exactly what the scientific study showed, that heart carries memory. It is a primal quality, for man carries the memory of all previous generations with him. The memory image is something very artificial and rare. And this next part, I think, really pertains to 2012. Is this an unconscious conclusion? Does matter conclude? It feels and fights for its individual being, and the will manifests itself first in change, i.e. there's a kind of free will that modifies the essence of a thing as a result of pleasure or flight from displeasure. Matter has a number of protean qualities, which it emphasizes, reinforces, or deploys for the whole, depending on the attack. I don't think he realizes these implications of the cycles of time that was occurring. In this next section, he says, the course of philosophy, semicolon. First, men are thought to be the originators of all things, and gradually things are explained by analogy to single human qualities. And finally, one arrives at sensation. Great question. Is sensation a primal fact of all matter? Attraction and repulsion? And it just ends with a question mark. So sensation and matter, like both being, if matter concludes and is sensation a fact of matter, so I guess I'll combine it and say, does sensation conclude? All this 0-point stuff that McKenna got to describe the best, even though it hasn't technically happened for all of humanity yet, is exactly what this question Nietzsche is speaking of. He says philosophy must be considered in the same way as astrology. that is, combining the fate of the world with that of man, i.e., regarding the highest evolution of man as the highest evolution of the world. All the sciences receive their nourishment from this philosophical drive. Mankind destroys first the religions, then science. I mean, this is all his early notebooks of the 1870s, you know. He won't write his Zarathustra for another 10 years. This is where he talks about him wanting to describe the philosopher of mankind. It says, most men are guided by drives to such an extent that they don't notice what's happening. I want to tell and to show what is happening. The one philosopher is here, identical to all scientific striving, for all the sciences rest on nothing but the general foundation of the philosopher, to demonstrate the tremendous unity of all drives for knowledge. You know, the shattered scholar is one who demonstrates the unity of all drives for knowledge. You know, it doesn't actually spiritually nourish anything. Yeah, these notebooks are great.